Hi, this is Grahame Morris, Member of Parliament for Easington, with my roundup of the events in Parliament and in the constituency. Hope everyone's enjoying this glorious summer sunshine, and I hope everyone had a terrific time at the Durham Miners Gala. When Parliament was back, I did manage to speak in the debate on universal credit. It's a hot potato in the constituency and still accounts for the majority of casework, both universal credit issues and personal independence payment assessments. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful to be able to speak in this important debate, and I fully understand why tempers are high given the terrible impact it's had and Minister's assurances about mitigating the impact of universal credit. That doesn't square with many people's experience. Indeed, departments' own surveys have found 40% of claimants were experiencing financial difficulties, 25% could not make an online claim. I think that's higher in Easington. 20%, 1 in 5 claimants, are not paid in full on time. And indeed, despite the Secretary of State's assurances earlier, the department can't measure the exact number of additional people in employment as a direct result of universal credit. In the limited time I've got, Madam Deputy Speaker, I really must thank the charities, advice groups, campaigners who are supporting my constituents to get by on universal credit. In particular, I want to reference the East Durham Trust, Malcolm Fallow, and the excellent team of full-time support workers and their exceptional volunteers. Without their advocacy, benefit and debt advice, families in my constituency would be where many families wouldn't have a roof over their heads or electricity or gas on the meter. And through the East Durham Trust Food Bank, they've been able to put food on their tables to feed their families. There'll be thousands of people waiting for health assessments, for universal credit or employment support allowance. So I've got some practical advice, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister said she wanted some suggestions. While the current system remains, claimants, I believe, must take steps to protect themselves. Indeed, in a written parliamentary answer that I received on the 28th of March from the Minister for Disabled People, I was advised that anyone who has called for a work capability assessment as part of their claim for ESA and universal credit would receive an information leaflet about the assessment process, and this leaflet would give details about how they can request this assessment is recorded. I would advise anyone undergoing assessment to get it recorded. I've dealt with cases where individuals have gone from 0 points to 15 points. Without the recording, it wouldn't have been possible to challenge the original decision. And the health assessor commissioned by the DWP should provide the recording equipment and answer any questions that a person has. Unfortunately, although the department claims to be digital by default, if you want to make a recording of a PIP assessment, the individual claimant must provide their own recording equipment. That's absolutely ridiculous. I'm in little doubt that's a deliberate barrier to prevent people making claims. I would urge members in the House to support the motion before them today. I also spoke in the defence statement and put forward the case for the Royal Fleet auxiliary ships to be built in the United Kingdom to preserve jobs and to support the campaign to have more manufacturing in the UK. I apologise for interrupting his flow, but I don't think anyone on either side of the House would disagree with the importance and the incredible job that the Royal Navy does. But our point on this side of the House, I suspect shared by some on the government benches, is shipbuilding is a vital strategic industry. There are many benefits apart from producing the very best ships in the world, but in terms of maintaining an employment and skills base that itself could generate more economic activity. And I do hope the Minister will take that into account, not least the importance in the supply chain.
There's nothing there that I would not disagree with him with. Absolutely, he's right.
In defence questions, I also asked about the retention of skilled armed forces personnel.
Grahame Morris
I thank the Minister for that reply, but my question was really about the retention of skilled personnel. And like many honourable and right honourable members, I was proud to attend the Armed Forces celebrations in my own constituency. And I did chat to a number of former and current service personnel about the consequences of accelerated promotion within the Armed Forces. And service personnel, so I'm told, are being pushed through the ranks to cover gaps created by a retention crisis, which in turn is placing other pressures on recruitment. Can the Minister advise what's the average length of service today compared to 10 years ago?
Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, firstly let me join him in paying tribute to Armed Forces Day. I think this is something which is growing in status. It's important that we strengthen the bond between society and indeed the Armed Forces. It is from society that we actually recruit, and that is the challenge that we face.
And later in the week I met with some workers from my own union, from Unite, from the Nissan factory in Sunderland, who were lobbying for some clarity on government policy in relation to trade tariffs because of the importance of that issue for their sector and indeed for the whole automotive supply chain, much of which is in my constituency. I had a meeting with the Highways Agency for England, representatives from the Northern Regional Office, and I raised concerns about the Safer A19 campaign, how important it was to ensure that we have an investigation into the number of accidents and to have some remedial measures to improve the road. I also raised issues about Seaton Lane and the junction there and the problems that are being caused and the need to carry out some improvements. I did raise a point of order in relation to a question that I had answered from the Department of Work and Pensions, and I seem to have a contradictory answer from the Minister, and I sought some clarification on that.
Mr. Speaker, I received a reply from the Minister for Disabled People, the Honourable Member for Truro and Falmouth, to a parliamentary question 156404, which confirmed that an automatic insulin pump could be considered an aid in relation to the awarding of points for personal independence payments. But when I raised the Minister's answer with Atos, the Independent Assessment Services, Barry Killop, the Atos Clinical Director, stated that their stance is correct, and I quote, "As it stands, he feels that I had been given an incorrect response by the DWP." Mr. Speaker, there appears to be a discrepancy between what the Minister is saying and the response from the organisation responsible for implementing the policy. Depending on who is correct, could have serious implications for a constituent of mine who I believe is being unfairly denied access to PIP. Mr. Speaker, who actually has the final say on what the policy is in practice?
I'd hosted a round table, a cancer round table, which involved specialists, cancer specialists. We discussed radiotherapy and cancer treatments. And later that week, I was able to ask a question in health questions about the Cancer Drugs Fund and how that should really be a cancer treatment fund, because it would provide more effective outcomes for a greater number of people.
Mr. Speaker, only 5% of the NHS cancer budget is spent on radiotherapy, about 385 million a year, and this underinvestment is affecting patient access to advanced modern radiotherapy and outcomes. Isn't it time to make the Cancer Drugs Fund a cancer treatment fund and extend those opportunities?
Well, we are looking at the future of the Cancer Drugs Fund as part of the new 10-year plan. There is a radiotherapy review going on at the moment, which the Honourable Gentleman will be aware of, and knowing him, he'll be engaged with in his area.
It was my constituency party all-member meeting, and I gave my parliamentary report, answered questions from members. In business questions, I raised a long-running dispute with the PCS union and the DVSA and pointed out how important it was to have that dispute settled.
The Leader and the House will recognise the vital work that the Driver Vehicle Standards Agency does to keep the public and road users safe, but may not be aware the DVSA have been in dispute with their staff for the last 3 years. Before the recess, can we have a statement from the Secretary of State for Transport and a commitment to intervene as a matter of urgency so that we can engage meaningfully between management and the PCS union to end this expensive, damaging and demoralising dispute?
Well, I'm not aware of the particular dispute that the honourable gentleman raises, but he might be aware that there are Bayes questions next week, and perhaps he could take it up with ministers who could look into it for him.
In the Transport Select Committee, we've been looking at investment in transport infrastructure, and the last session was with the Transport Secretary, Chris Grayling. I did get the chance to put some questions to him about the East Coast Main Line and the reasons that the franchise failed. And quite unusually, he did acknowledge that the existing model, the private rail franchise model, is broken and that we need to look for something better.
Well, I think there's some holes in your argument, Minister. I mean, if you use that service regularly as I do, I mean, you'd recognise the old 125 trains, and indeed the staff survey indicates that the problems with maintenance and them not being maintained to a high enough standard, not even ordering enough replacement windows, for example, when there are breakages, toilets out of order, leaking ovens and so on. So, it's not fair to characterise the line as having pristine trains, although you've made an announcement. You've made an announcement yesterday about of course,
the pristine trains are arriving shortly. Hopefully, there was one. There was one on a trial run yesterday. We passed it at Doncaster, looking very good. Waiting for the LNER brands to be painted on the site. Actually, I'm glad. One thing we definitely agree on, I think the LNER brand, it is definitely meant to be there for the long term. I think actually swapping brands for a railway line every 7 years is the wrong thing to do. And South Western Railway, Great Western Railway, the LNER, all intended to be long-term brands. Just,
I'm sorry, I don't want to prolong this, but just in terms of the new operating models, you're going to come back to the committee with some further advice when you've thought through them, but you're not even prepared to countenance maintaining that as a directly operated service, a public service.
Well, so my anxiety comes down to two things. First of all, I think there are benefits to be brought from public-private partnership, and I definitely intend this. We're not planning to sell off this railway.
I held an advice surgery in Haswell at Haswell Mencap at the Lisa Dixon Centre, and I had a very useful meeting with the police, with Inspector Sarah Baxter, to talk about local issues. I'm going to be in Hordern for the anniversary, the birthday party of the Hordern Hub, and I'm going to have meetings with the CAB in Peterlee about some of the issues that are raised locally in the constituency. I hope this report and this roundup is helpful. Parliamentary recess is starting now, but we'll still be carrying on and doing the work in the constituency. So if I can be of any assistance, I can still make representations to government departments and write to ministers. Please don't hesitate to contact me, and the details are following shortly.